Thank you, Amal, very, very much. Philippe, Philippe is somewhere. Philippe, thank you for inviting me very, very much. Amal, thank you as well. Is it okay I speak English? Je suis désolé, je parle français horrible. Forget it. Yeah. I'm going to give 2 lectures this evening, but I'll be very, very quick. I promise. Okay. My wife is over there. For the first time she ever comes to hear me lecture, she will stand up and just put a line across her throat at 20 minutes, and then I'll stop the first part of the lecture, and then I'll switch to the second part. The first part I want to do is I want to take you into my world, okay? My world and my world at the Architectural Association in London. How many of you are familiar with the AA in London? Okay, guys, that's not enough, for God's sakes. Okay, listen, so I'm going to stop introducing, and I am going to go like mad. There are about 110 slides here. I am going to tear through them in 20 minutes. I'm not going to talk about every one, but I want you to come into my world. So we're going to say goodbye to old London, and we're going to head right into Bedford Square. All right? A really, really different place right in the center of London, in a Georgian square, right near Tottenham Court Road. The principal idea behind this talk is that classrooms have become places of distraction. Attention is absolutely everywhere. Marshall McLuhan said it 50 years ago, and the AA has lived by it ever since. Now, I have no idea how that slide got in there, because I didn't even put the slide in there. But this is a presentation of a unit master on the beginning of the year at the AA. These are one of the parties that we hold at the AA. You're coming to a whole different place. The AA was founded in 1847. This was one of its first locations. This is where we taught and studied architecture back in the 19th century and very, very early part of the 20th century. In 1917, we moved to these Georgian houses on Bedford Square, and for the last 100 years have taught some of the most radical and experimental architecture through a set of old Georgian houses. It's a world like this where we're constantly critiquing, constantly commenting, and constantly, absolutely, undoubtedly interrogating every contemporary idea. There's also a radical strand that runs dramatically through the school, whether it's Jack Self doing his very, very best to spoil the graduation picture at the end of the year, to students commenting on the fact that the RIBA, the governing body of architecture in Great Britain, is a repressive, insensitive, brutal, and arrogant organization, which the AA won't ever stand for. You guys might know us a little bit more. The history of the second half of the 20th century in architecture is wrapped up around the AA. Its people, its personalities, and the projects that have come out of the school. On the right-hand side, Archigram, Peter Cook, who was heavily studied at the AA, and his group of 5 that really reimagined architecture in the 1960s were all based in and around the AA. Same for women, which the school has always been early on supportive of. The first women graduated from the AA over 100 years ago. School has supported women ever since the very, very beginning of its formation. We're also constantly rethinking what it means to live and to inhabit and to dwell. So this is a project from some students traveling in Slovenia for 3D sleeping, thinking differently about how to sleep in space and how to inhabit space. It's ideas like that, or ideas that have come out of these two, Zaha Hadid on the left and Rem Koolhaas on the right, both of whom studied at the AA, went on to teach at the AA, and then, as most of you should know, have gone into extraordinary careers beyond the AA and have constantly given back to the school. Zaha, and one of the key aspects of the AA is we're not only a school, we're also a publishing house. So we're constantly circulating ideas that are being generated from the place. This folio series, which one of the school's director, Alvin Boyarsky, set up, is a tremendous way for young talent to begin to get their ideas out. These were some of the first places that Zaha ideas were born, and these were the sorts of drawings that she was doing. The story is fabulous at the AA. You guys won't know because you probably always work on computers. Do you guys work with Mayline bars? Do you guys draw with pens and pencils and rulers and things? Yeah, okay, first year does, that's great. So you all brought models to the lecture, which I think is fabulous. Zaha, same education, guys, all right? Building models and making drawings by hand and with T-squares, we called them then. All Zaha did was take her T-square from being level, she broke the end, changed the angle, and that was what began to give rise to all of these drawings looking at the world and the planet in a very, very different way. Instead of working at 180 degrees, she worked at about 150 degrees. Just a subtle shift like that was a kind of rethinking, and the kind of rethinking that the school is constantly encouraging. Again, back to the world of women within the school and also to the parties within the school. The school is a cultural center of the City of London as much as it's an architecture school. So the parties are probably as infamous as the work that comes out of the school. Fire eating in the library, just something not customary in any school of architecture's library. Alvin Boyarsky on the left riding an elephant through Bedford Square at one of our carnivals. So guys, it just goes to show that architecture school might be where you make all of these models that you have, but at the very same time, it can be a place for pushing all kinds of boundaries. Graduates of the school are not only people like Rem and Zaha. Mark Fisher, one of the most extraordinary graduates from the school that went on to do the stage sets for Pink Floyd, The Who, and others. These are a few of those. And Fergus Henderson, who runs an extraordinary restaurant called St. John's, giving rise to the fact that the education you receive at the AA is not to make you an architect, it's to make you a thinker. It's for you to think, so that whether you pursue architecture, whether you pursue cooking, whether you pursue stage design, or anything else, it's an education for thinking. We try to draw the school a lot and try to explain it. This was one of our recent attempts, which you could probably make no sense of, nor can we. This is an attempt in the 1970s to describe what we're doing using the London tube map as a way of trying to draw and to think about what we're doing in the place we're located in. This, again, is another drawing of actually cutting open Bedford Square and looking into the world of our school. So that's a glimpse really inside. And this is a glimpse just down into Ching's Yard, which is one of the central spaces, one of the trap courtyard spaces right in the center, in the heart of the school. At the same time we're in London, we bought a forest. About 15 years ago, we bought a forest 2.5 hours southwest of London, and we bought it for £1. Which is a great deal, all right? 350 acres for £1, and we run another school down there. It's a kind of second part of the AA now, and this is one of the buildings that the students designed and built on site down in this forest in Hook Park. At the same time, the AA has always been about travel. This year in the AA, we have 727 students from 91 different countries and 250 members of academic staff to teach those. So the staff-student ratio is about 3 to 1. Students are never taught in groups of more than 12. It's a very intimate unit master system. And whether we're traveling, as the guys were here, or more recently in Santiago looking at another form of architectural ideas, the school is constantly looking to push the boundaries, whether in London or abroad. So guys, let's do something really quickly. I'm going to try to, what am I doing now? How long am I into this? 10 minutes? I got 13 minutes. All right, I'll keep going. All right, so intro and history, guys, really quickly. Then I'll talk units and agendas. Then I'll talk audiences and ideas. This is right here how you found a school of architecture. Architectural School of Design. This is the document from 1846 that founded the AA. So that's how you do it. In Britain anyways, you write a little document and bingo, it happens. And this is what happens then when you inhabit that world. And I think we've got a thing for dressing up at the AA. You're going to notice. We're great for dressing up. We also dress up buildings. So graduates include Richard Rogers of Rogers and Piano on the left. Rem Koolhaas, obviously top right. Bottom right, Zaha's project, one of her projects. And the bottom left, and a really largely unknown graduate from the AA, Denise Scott Brown, of Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown, and learning from Las Vegas. At the same time, the school has constantly hosted personalities from around the world. So Frank Lloyd Wright was someone who was constantly at the school. Again, Corbusier, Gropius, Aalto. The school has kept an open door. To this day, you all come to London, walk straight, like I did here today, walk straight in the front door. It was fantastic. No one stopped me. No one even attempted to bother me. I walked straight in the front door, came in the lecture hall, and sat down. Same with the AA. Walk in. But at the AA, the only thing different is the first place you're going to end up is at the bar. Which is great. You know, listen, you end up at the bar, most of you never leave the bar, and the bar is where a whole lot happens. It's also where David Bowie used to come, Mick Jagger used to come, and the school has kind of tried to build itself as a cultural center, not only as a school of architecture, because the idea being that you can't make a school of architecture, but you can build a cultural center. At the same time, we constantly work with the space out in front of the school. So these are some of the constructions that we've tested and built in the square. You recognize John Haydock, both as an outlet for people affiliated with the school, but also at the same time as learning programs that are a part of the school. So this is a pavilion built by students in their second year, designed, drawn, worked with consultants, and built in a 9-month period, 12 students. At the same time, it's not all technology, it's not all building. I love this, hippie teachers embracing broadcast media. It's the same way we probably embrace and question computers today. The school is, for a period of time, probably been a leader in digital design for maybe the last 10, 15, 20 years. At the same time, we're going through a period right now of deeply questioning the relevance of digital design. The other thing is look at our size. Oh my God, guys, will you look at that? I mean, look at the Beaux-Arts, something you guys might be more familiar with. And then look at our dinky little thing down there by comparison. So it just goes to show you don't need space and size to build ideas. You can build ideas anywhere you are at any time in any place. Units and agendas. Now, I'm going to tear through this. You're going to see the world from foundation and what people are doing in foundation. Hey, guys, many of you are first year sitting in here with your models. These are your friends at the AA, all right? That's a shot just into the first year studio a few weeks ago at the AA. As you can see, you don't need space, because if you did, we don't have it. And that's Ludwig looking up through his model, first year student. We're doing all sorts of things, whether it's through the intermediate school with Intermediate 1, Intermediate 3, looking at narratives and stories in architecture. I don't know, some quite bleak things. Some quite, I don't know, again, I don't know. The thing is, you can't talk about all these things, you just have to look at them. This lecture's a little bit like Vogue magazine, maybe. You gotta kind of just flip through and look at the pictures and see what you like, and throw away necessarily what you don't like. Inter 8, which is on the screen now, looking really at high-rise construction in the city. My studio, which works between, we work with chefs. Experimental chefs around the world with fermentation, and we work with fermentation and experimenting with cooking processes in relation to design for architectural projects. Something much, much, much more obscure, something much more on the boundaries of barely being there, you would say, is Intermediate 10. They tried to make as small a move as possible in almost any circumstance, so tried to build and make as very little as possible. Making is a huge part of the school, as I said already. Another unit just literally working on stories through Photoshop, so no making at all. Just constantly exploring something through visualization. The school has an extraordinary history of drawing, which it continues to develop to this day in all different ways, shapes, and forms, and looking at things at very, very different scales. You can get drawings like this, much more renders, which frankly I can't bear. Or some of the drawings coming out of Didier Faustino's studio, Diploma Unit 2, which are much, much more extraordinary, intricate worlds. Next door to those, and guys, we're all set up next to each other, okay? One studio is next to the other, is next to the other. So these guys in Didier's studio are sitting right next to these guys in John Palmacino's studio that are really consciously looking at geopolitical systems in the most intense research fashion possible within the realm of an architecture school, who are sitting right next to these guys, Sarah 9, Christina and Efren from Madrid, doing a whole other type of architectural world and architectural language. So at the same time, you then have Carlos just scanning the city, as he calls it, working both two-dimensionally and three-dimensionally, and someone like Theo Lallis' studio literally building canopies in the Amazon rainforest. Next, I mean, my God, my head's kind of spinning in telling you this, because the heterogeneity is what the school does. This is out of Pier Vittorio Arelli's studio, really drawing on the historical project in architecture, which Theo couldn't care less about, frankly. PV, the history and the historical project, is his focus and his students' focus, and these kind of extremely controlled minimalist images, again, are his way of investigating that. At the same time, someone like Shin Egashira from Japan is experimenting with all kinds of mechanical systems and machines, and this is a drawing of a photograph of his exhibition at the end of the year at the AA. At the same time, we're constantly exploring the spaces of the building, cutting through them, imagining cutting through them, making connections, and constantly not stopping at the fabric of the existing building. And at the same time, wearable architecture. David Green always has had, David Green, one of the members of Archigram, always had a dream for a hairy suit. And this was the realization of it about 10 years ago. Working both digitally, working computationally with emergent technology systems, but constantly, as you can tell, making. This is a shot inside the Design Research Laboratory studio a couple months ago, just one of the walls in the studio of just models that they had accumulated, and constantly looking, I think, to just push the boundaries of ideas and what we can do within the realm of architecture. You all might be familiar with the graduate program, the Design Research Laboratory, that was founded by Jeff Kipnis, Patrick Schumacher, and Brett Steele about almost 20 years ago now, which really began the world of digital design within the School of Architecture as an academic program, but also something where it really utilized those tools in the most experimental fashion. These are just a few shots of them, the projects they're creating, the pavilion that we built out on Bedford Square. But guys, the most important thing at the AA, and like here, will be the students. It's all about you. 727 different ideas and agendas that the school supports and hopes to push to the absolute extreme. So audiences and ideas. One thing you have to be able to do as an architect is communicate. If you can't communicate, it doesn't matter how good of an architect you are. So nevertheless, you've got to know how to communicate and to talk and present those models. So guys, those models you've got in front of you, you've got to know how to make them, but you've got to know how to present them. This is a student in his 5th year presenting his project for the highest prize in the school, which is called honors at the end of the 5th year. And this is the kind of audience he attracts, but also the interrogation that he'll attract. At the same time, this is the bar, guys, and I had to put the bartender in because Darko's been at school longer than I have, and I think it's a great photograph of Darko and actually the center of our universe, which is that bar, that marble bar top just there. This is the way that you present work at school. It's always through a portfolio. You work on everything through the portfolio. There are no grades at the AA whatsoever. It's a totally pass-fail school, and you get a pass or a fail on the last day of the year. If you fail, you do the year again starting the next autumn. If you pass, you go to the next level. It's that simple. At the same time, we're into a lot of outreach at the moment and trying to use and engage more with contemporary forms of technology, working through, if you look, images of the publishing house over the years and the fact that, well, now publishing for us is much more on e-books than it probably is in hard copy even, though you get a good sense of what, back in 2012, this photo is of what we were putting out in hard copy at that point in time. A source for you all, it was a source for me as a student constantly, is AA files. Go back to these AA files and you will see projects that are still blowing your mind, drawings and models that will still blow your mind. You'll also see the work of so many people that have gone on to extraordinary careers very early in their days. Guys, you can find us here, AA Live. Get the app and you'll know what's going on at the AA and come visit. At the same time, I run all of our programs we run across the world. We work in 35 different countries. Last year alone, we had over 1,200 students a part of our programs, not in London, but abroad. And they span across the globe, those programs do. it's a little bit like, I always like to describe it as going back to the early days when you traveled as well. So not only is travel a contemporary thing, it's something of the past. Whether it's from building a cinema in the middle of Africa to working in Bolivia, you have to learn from other places. It's why architects have always traveled, and it's why we continue to travel. Ross Lovegrove presenting in the middle of the desert. Or, guys, I think I tried to sneak in a little film here, though my wife may stop me. Experimenting down at Hook Park with robots with chainsaws. We got so tired of seeing little things extruded through robots, what someone I know calls toothpaste, that we went to the extreme, and we've custom done chainsaws in order to, let me just say, hold on. We've custom done a chainsaw in order to put it on a robot, in order to make architecture out of that. So it's using the chainsaw as a new tool in working with the robot in order to construct buildings. At the one moment, that's technology going one direction. On the other hand, we go to a tiny little village in the middle of Japan where the median age is about 65 years old. And we do and build constructions and kind of re-inhabit a village that people are slowly leaving. So in the bottom right, believe it or not, that little thing with strings is a cinema screen that in the middle of the night you can watch a film on perfectly, though you wouldn't believe it looking at it in the day. We have another group called Unknown Fields that are out searching. You guys all have these iPhones that every one of us has got. What these guys are doing is finding out where all the parts of your iPhone have come from and looking at both the environmental damage and all of the kind of sacrifices that are made in order to put this thing in your pocket. They're going through and building a set of films. You can look them up, Unknown Fields, interrogating the kind of background to the iPhone. At the same time, there's this guy, Tobias Klein, who did something, took a really simple object. And you guys in the first year, you guys start working with these things now. And you'll see that all he's done is taken a simple little 3D printer, he's hacked it, and he's printed sweets. So he's 3D printed sugar. And the thing I love about it is he hacked the machine to 3D print sugar, the colors you can get out of it, the different shapes, just absolutely extraordinary. But then what I loved more than anything, it was really hot, and within about 6 hours, those things he had made all started melting, particularly when the kids arrived. To building constructions in Los Angeles, very, very different ways of drawing. We're working with the Alessi Corporation, that's Alberto Alessi on the right, to help them develop projects and products that they're doing, particularly up in airplanes right now. Carpets. Carpets might not be the first thing you guys think of when you're trying to make and design an architectural project, but One Whole Studio works just through carpet making as a way of looking and thinking about architecture. But it's really about building audiences. My alarm's gone off, and thank God I've done it, guys. Yeah, I'm right there. It's about building audiences. The question I might leave you with on this half of the lecture is, what if a school were a planet, and a planet was a plan? Because if you guys remember what Stuart Brand said, once a new technology rolls over you, if you're not the steamroller, you're part of the road. Two other people I wanted to leave you with as I finish this bit. Cedric Price, wish we were here, wish you were there. Cedric was an extraordinary thinker. And this woman, Ava Frank, head of the Storefront for Art and Architecture in New York, who will come to be the new director of the AA in about 2.5 months. So the school will take a whole new direction under a director, Ava Frank, 37-year-old woman, Catalan, but who's been living in New York for the last several years. That's the AA, guys, okay? Phew! This is hard, yeah? So I'm going to just click out of that. Stick with me. Don't go anywhere, yeah? And all I'm going to do is pop open a different lecture. It's going to take you to a different place totally. Stick with me, yeah? All right, let's see where I'm going. My God, just come up, yeah? Wait, okay, hold on. I just got to go back one. Okay, there we go. Whew. Guys, I need a little sip of water. Stick with, now, we're going to do 20 minutes more. Is that all right? 20 minutes more, all right? Do you understand okay? No? Right, no? If you don't understand, just enjoy the pictures, all right? All right? So now, guys, ready? Boy. I'm an architect as well. I got wrapped up in this place called the AA. For the last 10 years of my life, I've spent it at the AA, and I've spent it with this man who you're going to see in a minute. My wife has probably been about third or fourth in the line of people I've spent time with. Most of my time is at the AA, then with Tony Kumeya, then maybe our son, then my wife. So she's about fourth, yeah? Oh, right, my teaching and business partner, Chris Matthews. So maybe my wife is fifth, yeah? Which isn't a good thing, but that's the truth, okay? So Tony Kumeya, Ceramica Kumeya. Have you ever imagined working with ceramics at all? Yes. Okay, thank God. Ceramics, I had no idea I cared about ceramics. I'm going to tell you a story. I ended up writing a book called Ceramica Kumeya, Shaping Ideas, and put together a pretty enormous exhibition that traveled around Europe for about 3 years on Tony Kumeya and the world of Tony Kumeya. And Tony Kumeya is this man on the right-hand side with the beard, and the man on the left is Frederic Amat, a Catalan artist, and this is the middle of Tony's office. His studio in Granollers, you guys, which is about 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside of Barcelona. So those are two key people. You with me? All right, the other two people are Teresa, who runs the office, who is the boss, really, and then William in the back left, who is Tony's son, who will be the fourth generation of Ceramica Kumeya. Here's why I fell in love with the place. I went there, and I'm always looking for places that are not organized. The Swiss bore me to death. The Scandinavians would probably be second. I'm always looking for places disorganized, messy, kind of a shambles, but where creativity you can just feel to be absolutely everywhere. And this is one of those places. And it was a mess. Stuff was everywhere. You could actually fall through the floor in the building and go down 2 stories because there were holes in the floor big enough for a person to fall through. This is the world of Tony Kumeya. Now bear with me for a second, and I'm going to show you a very, very short film about where all this started. And guys, it looks boring at the beginning. It doesn't look remarkable. But what these guys can do with a potter's wheel, I think, is just extraordinary. And it's probably the thing that drew me to ceramics as an art form, but also, you're going to see in a minute, as an architectural form. And here these guys go with their feet. And this is in a place called Breda, which is really the center of ceramics in Catalonia. And watch these guys. I was watching it last night to make sure they got it. Yeah, here's the man that gets there. And these guys, what they can do just with their hands and feet and a piece of clay, I find really, really, truly remarkable the way that you can shape, mold a material. Tony Kumeya has always said to me, you might think of ceramics as an old material, but ceramics is a phenomenal 21st century material. And I think this demonstrates its timelessness. I hope the few projects I show you in a minute are going to really illustrate how you should think of it as a material within any project. But to look and to watch this man craft this piece of work is just really remarkable. The talent, the ability to control that material as it becomes thinner, as it becomes more delicate, and also control the speed at which he's working. There's a nice moment coming up now where he's just bingo. He's done, off he cuts it, and whoa. I mean, wow. In my mind, just one of the most fantastic skills. So that's what drew me to Tony. And I want to tell the story. So I'm going to start backwards, guys, just a little bit. Maureen, cut me at 20 minutes again. So this is Tony's father, Anthony Kumeya. Anthony Kumeya was the second generation, and Anthony Kumeya was a fantastic artist in ceramic. His 2 heroes were Bernard Leach, the British potter, and Shoji Hamada, the Japanese potter. And this is a slide of Tony, or Anthony as I know him, also crafting in the same way. But you guys, look at the section at the end. So you see him building it. The most important slide is the bottom right. Look at the section of that, which is just beautiful and controlled by hand, but the section of that form is just spectacular. Antony, you guys probably don't think of fine artists as being quite extraordinary. Antony's friends were Dali, Ettore Sotas, Siegfried Giedion, Jose Luis Sert. He was in an extraordinary milieu in the middle of the 20th century and making pieces that looked like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. But probably most impressively are when these vessels are set out. And there are two things. Guys, it's hard to get that form, and it's even harder to put the glaze on that form. And that's what these do. Look at the glaze. Oh, you guys got to go look at ceramics tonight, okay? You must at some point look at some ceramics and look at the glazes on them, because if you look at this, it's just magical. Also, the different forms, the one in the bottom right, just really extraordinary to get that form that shallow. So a couple points, a few slides of just text to just try to get the single point across. A trade is made of accumulated tradition. It is kept alive by individual pride. Professional opinion makes it exact. And as with most outstanding arts, competent praise stimulate and support it. So tradition only works with innovation, technologies, and development. And what Tony, 4 rules of the Cumella studio, they only use stoneware. Ceramics must always look like ceramics. I'm going to show you a project that Tony did with Renzo Piano in a minute. Renzo Piano, the one thing Tony said, never understood what it was to use ceramics. He said Renzo Piano thought ceramics were plastic. And he said that is just so wrong. You have got to feel the material and understand the material when you use ceramics. You cannot forget the third dimension. The most boring piece of ceramics is the ceramic tile in your bathroom. All right? When you go home tonight and go in your bathroom and look at the ceramic tile, it's the most boring form of ceramics. And finally, they don't have a catalog, they have procedures. Architects come to them with ideas, and they realize those ideas in dreams. So there are 4 different ways of working with ceramics: extrusion, pressing, casting, and revolving, or turning. I'm not going to go into the particulars of each. Extruding works with a mold that you push clay through. Pressing works with a mold that you effectively press a mold onto. Casting, you work with the material in a liquid form, in a mold that can be of up to 10 parts. And revolving is literally taking a little piece of clay and spinning it so fast that it achieves a different form. Those are the 4 types he works with. This is one of the earliest projects because Tony's father, don't forget, was a fine artist in ceramics. Tony realized he had no ability for fine art at all. So he moved it into ceramics. And what he did is, oh wait, guys, see the stuff on the right? Hey guys, you looking at that stuff, yeah? Guys, the pieces on the right, watch them because I'm going to come back in about 5 minutes and show you the way you take a traditional material like that was a very early projects of Tony, and you make it contemporary, all right? Tony's first break came with Enrique Morales and Benedetta Tagliabue, EMBT. A couple of projects, one for the park at Diagonal Mar, these extraordinary ceramic pieces within this park, but probably more than anything, for Santa Caterina Market in Barcelona. Do you all know the project? Yes, fantastic. That's where Tony, so I tell you a quick story. I was having lunch with Benedetta Tagliabue not long after Enrique had died and asked her who did this extraordinary roof. And she said Tony Cumella. And that afternoon, I was on the train out to Tony's studio, first time I met him, because I was dying to meet the man who made this project. When Tony was asked to do this project, Enrique Morales said to him, "How many colors can you do?" And Tony said, "I could probably do 6 or 7 different colors." And Enrique said, "How about 74 different colors?" And Tony said, "We can try 74 different colors." And that's exactly what they did on the roof of, here they are on the left, or actually on the slide you're seeing. And this is what I'm describing about as the roof of Santa Catarina Market, which became that. That was Tony's first big break. Guys, what those are is fruits and vegetables. It's a drawing that Benedetta did where she effectively digitized a photograph of fruits and vegetables. And so what you're looking at there is effectively apples, pears, bananas, and everything else that have been kind of abstracted and then done as a tile roof. But I think a pretty extraordinary project well, it's an extraordinary project. That's probably enough said, really. A magical project. But, guys, what did I say earlier? Also the most boring form of ceramics, a tile. And Tony's not ever going to stop there. So not long after that project was complete, in fact, in the same year that project was complete, Alejandra Zairapola, formerly of, oh my God, Foreign Office, my God. Of Foreign Office Architects called him up because he was doing a pavilion in Japan. And this is why I said watch that slide a little while ago, because instead of a simple form, what they built was an extraordinary piece of three-dimensional ceramics using the pressing technique in order to make a project and a facade that look like that, which I think is pretty magical. It's three-dimensional. The pieces together are about that thick. So you're working in a very different way with the material, using a different form and a different technology in order to build and construct. This is another example of working with an extrusion. Simple repetition. Guys, it doesn't have to be complex. It's what I love about when Marie was talking about particularly some of Sue Fujimoto's work. It doesn't have to be mind-blowingly complex to be incredibly significant. And Tony with the ceramics, this is exactly what he's getting across. It's really through repetition and a simplicity that you can also achieve an extraordinary effect. These are all facades, all different forms of working and all different forms of surfaces. But surfaces also, in the way through their negative space, create extraordinary effects with light in the most simple but the most direct fashion. This is a particularly nice piece of work that Tony did for Pachimangado with the pavilion at Zaragoza in Spain. Beautiful piece of extruded ceramic columns that literally, they're very shallow. So they're just covering a steel structure. But they're beautiful pieces of terracotta, molded and then stacked one on top of the other to create really an extraordinary effect. But an extraordinary effect that is so beautiful in terms of surface and light. And there's water at the base of the project that reflects them spectacularly. Similarly, with this project, a really simple difference between what is gloss and what is matte. Guys, simplest thing in the world. When do you use gloss paper and when do you use matte paper? It's the same question Tony asks himself every single day when it comes to a project. All those pieces that are reflecting the light are gloss. All those that are absorbing it are matte. And what it creates is an extraordinary effect on those elevations. Similarly, a pretty magical project in Lisbon for the Oceanario is a project that uses a whole lot of different techniques of Tony's. The solid pieces are from pressing. The other ones are from casting, the negative ones. So he's used two different methods and combined them in the facade of this building. And I think the important thing is that the hand is still a part of it. I'm going to show you some robotic work Tony started doing, but even in that, the hand continues to be a part of the project. And these, again, are some of the effects. When Marie was talking about the effects of light in the work of Fujimoto, I mean, similarly here, any project that Tony is engaged with is trying to look at the way that light interacts with the building and through the spaces of the parts that he's creating. This is a project he did more recently with Enrique Ruiz Gelli, someone who also teaches at the AA, for a tower, for a residential tower in Taipei. And this is a really simple project, just an elevation, guys, made up of one of those pieces there. So that's 4 pieces put together in the top left. And then you multiply that, and you get an extraordinary kind of lattice screen. Just a beautiful, absolutely magical way out of a very simple template through repetition of putting a system together. This is more experimental work that Tony's doing with some people at Harvard. Again, pressing and then combining pieces and working with more, again, more structure. This is the way that they're doing that. What I'm fascinated by with ceramics is not necessarily the final product, but the way you make it. The same way, guys, with those models that you all have, that's the first step. I'm interested in the next step and the step after and how you do it. Same thing with Tony. It isn't always the final product that's most interesting, it's the process to get there. Here again, they are working in the studio and using different materials, but also different methods as a way of working with ceramics in the 21st century. Now, guys, he doesn't only work with architects. He works with fine artists as well. Pep Duran, they cast bread, they cast top hats, they cast basketballs, and out of that, through that casting process, made these works of art. You can see loaves of bread. There's a top hat in there. There's a whole bunch of different objects. So working with the Catalan artist Pep Duran, or Frederic Amat, who you saw at the very, very beginning, this extraordinary project for tears as a surface within a theater in Barcelona. This project, though, do you guys know this project? Villeneuve's, Enrique Ruiz Gelli again. An extraordinary ceramic surface on this facade here. And I'm going to show you how it's done. You're going to see the film in the top left that's showing literally you've CNC'd a piece of polystyrene, extruded a flat piece of clay, and then you've literally hand molded that clay onto these polystyrene forms. That's what made that surface of that building. So you get the steps down in the bottom, and then what you've got is, this is them then being constructed in the studio, and that's what they look like on the surface. Tony can also work with, these are images of about 15,000 different people transposed onto a ceramic surface. More recently, working with the inspiration from the Victoria and Albert collection in order to create a surface there. But again, look at the handwork within the technology. So it's combining both analog with digital, constantly combining the analog with the technology. Test for that. Project for Renzo Piano, if you ever want to talk about something that's a simple act of repetition for a surface, I think you guys, there are about 300,000 discs, ceramic discs, covering the surface of that building. It's a project he worked on for several years. These are the discs, and if you bear with me for half a second, I'm going to show you a very, very short film of just how those discs are made. This is the way revolving works with the robot. This is the very, very simple process of making those 300,000 discs actually in a factory that typically makes plates. So it's a factory that typically makes plates that in this instance was asked to make these 300,000 pieces for the facade of the building. And what I like is the fact that you can work across disciplines and use the skills of one discipline and import it into another. Now, let me get out of there, you guys. Bear with me. I'm close, yeah? How am I doing for time? 3 minutes and 40 seconds, yeah? All right, let's keep going, guys, yeah? That's the surface. Similarly here, I'm going to show you working with a robot in this project. This is the surface of a sheet, simple extruded sheet of ceramics. Very, very simple. Daniel Isern is the Catalan architect. They did this and designed this to a score of music. So it's a Vivaldi piece of music that actually created the form that they cut into the material with. If this film ever gets started, I might zip it along here because they talk for a while. And what I more importantly want you to see, hey guys, this is inside the studio. That's, come on, how can you not be interested? There they are chucking the clay literally into the machine, and that's what it means to extrude clay. You literally chuck it in, and out it comes. It's the best way. I'm delighted you see this, because it really shows the way it works in the studio. Then literally it comes through, just like this. They cut it off, and here comes the robot that's just going to carve into it. So it's working between old technology, extruding, and much newer technology of how to score that and cut into that using the robot. And there it is. It's a simple, simple technique, just robot cutting into it, but cutting into the material in order to kind of change the surface. And guys, don't underestimate those fine cuts. The way that they pick up light is spectacular. Just spectacular. A very fine line. You don't have to dig yourself to the center of the earth to work with the light. Something as shallow as that on a facade can have an amazing effect. And I think if I skip ahead a little bit, what you're going to see, there they go. I'm going to just play it fast like this. There they are, stacking them up. Daniel's talking a bit more. Here they are, guys. These are them going up on the facade, and that gives you an idea of the scale of the facade and the amount of pieces it took to make that facade. Another project he's just completed with Carme Pinos is for this building, the Massana School in Barcelona. You all just look at what's happening there. It's a really, really simple piece. The entire elevation is ceramic, but it's just this, whether it's horizontal or vertical, that just shifts the whole way that you read the elevation, but that you also read the coloration, because the coloration is read very, very differently in one direction or the other. And one of Tony's probably most well-known projects is all the work he's done for Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Tony's had a huge part in all of the ceramics within Sagrada Familia, which involves incredible mold making to make quite intricate pieces, and also pretty extraordinary glazes and experiences in working with glazes as creating surfaces. And finally, I think we're right close to the end, guys, the matte building for Amanda Levette. Another very, very simple surface, but again, working with the light very, very beautifully. And here's exactly how that's made. So a quick film. That's the piece being extruded. I'm going to speed it up myself, take it through. It's the piece coming through. After it's extruded, it's cut into the shape. Then they take it away. At that point, I've gone with you. At that point, you go through the whole process. It's being glazed. It's being fired. A mold is then being made in order to cook it. Because the thing that happens is when you put these pieces in the kiln, they're so fragile that you actually have to put a piece, the white piece, inside of it so that it doesn't collapse in the kiln. So don't underestimate the technology in a very, very simple piece of stoneware. And this is the result and what that project looks like constructed. Again, an entire ceramic surface. I hope, oh man, you know, well, you can't hear it. There's just they're playing music. Because they're hollow, you can play music on the surface of the building, which is really quite a nice thing. I've worked with Tony with my unit, the AA, for a number of years in his studio. These are the kind of experiments that we've done. And finally, there we are. Phew, done, guys, finished, yeah? Thank you. Holy.